Tonight, airline jitters. The same Amsterdam to Detroit flight involved in Friday's alleged terrorism attempt is evacuated after a security scare that turned out to be a false alarm. Meanwhile, the accused Christmas terrorist is out of the hospital and is now being held at a federal prison in Michigan. We'll have all the latest developments. I'm Michelle Miller. Also tonight, anti-government demonstrators in Iran are killed in a new series of major clashes with police. Photo fakery. You always thought these pictures were real, but
this picture is a beautifully crafted lie.
And musicians step out to bring harmony to the homebound.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
Good evening. Russ Mitchell is off tonight. We begin with yet another incident involving a flight from Amsterdam to Detroit. Authorities again had to remove a passenger from the plane. Also, here's the latest on the Christmas terror attack. Suspect Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib is out of the hospital but remains in federal custody. And the White House says it will review watch list procedures and detection capabilities at airports. With more from Detroit, here's Jim Axelrod.
Not only was the Northwest plane landing this afternoon, Flight 253, same as the Christmas Day flight, targeted by a man with explosives. And not only did it originate in Amsterdam, like the Christmas Day flight, but the passenger taken off the plane in question was Nigerian, just like Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib.
They just kind of stormed in, picked him up, and took him out.
This time, it was nothing. The passenger had spent a lot of time in the bathroom on the flight, arousing suspicion, but he appeared just to be ill. As for Abdul-Muttalib, he was released today from the University of Michigan Medical Center and taken to Milan Federal Prison 50 miles south of Detroit. Administration officials are being pressed on why Abdul-Muttalib was on a terror watch list of 400,000 names, but not a no-fly list, even though his father warned U.S. officials a month ago he was concerned about his son's extreme religious views.
There was simply, throughout the law enforcement community, never information that would put this individual on a no-fly list or a selectee list.
Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano says at this point it does not appear Abdul-Muttalib was part of a plot.
Right now, we have no indication that it is part of anything larger, but obviously the investigation continues.
But senior administration officials continue to check out Abdul-Muttalib's claims that he had help from al-Qaeda operatives in Yemen, who he says assisted him in smuggling the explosive PETN on board.
The president has asked the Department of Homeland Security to, quite frankly, answer the very real question about how somebody with something as dangerous as PETN could have gotten onto a plane in Amsterdam.
Lawyers for Abdul-Muttalib are due in court tomorrow. Federal prosecutors say they're going to ask a judge for a DNA sample from the suspect. But Abdul-Muttalib himself will not be there. Michelle?
Jim Axelrod at Detroit Metropolitan Airport. Thank you. What caused the young Nigerian who came from a wealthy family and attended the best schools to turn into a radical? Here's Sheila McVicker from London.
Authorities in London are still trying to unravel the mystery of 23-year-old Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib's life. His journey from a world of privilege, including a multi-million-dollar London apartment, boarding schools, and elite universities, to alleged terrorist. It's a journey that may have begun years ago. At boarding school, in post-9/11 discussions, Abdul-Muttalib supported the Taliban.
And all the other Muslim kids in the class thought they were just a bunch of nutters, but Umar spoke in their defense.
At University College London, where he studied mechanical engineering, fellow students remember him as a devout but not radical Muslim. But authorities are convinced it was in London that he made the contacts which eventually led him to Flight 253. His father, Umaru Muttalib, a former Nigerian government minister and wealthy bank chairman, became so concerned by his son's extreme views that last month he warned U.S. authorities. Abdul-Muttalib would seem to be the latest in a growing list of well-educated and well-to-do young men who have turned to radical Islam and then terrorism.
People have been working for a long time to try to understand the process of radicalization, why it happens, why people at certain times in their lives suddenly find themselves attracted into extremist circles.
Abdulmutallab left London in June 2008, apparently traveling to Dubai and then Yemen, a hub for al-Qaeda. On December 16th in neighboring Ghana, Abdulmutallab bought a round-trip ticket from Lagos via Amsterdam to Detroit, paying $2,821 cash. He arrived in Lagos just in time for his flight.
He sneaked into Nigeria on the 24th of December 2009 and left the same day.
Just last month, U.S. Transportation Security Authority inspectors gave security at Lagos Airport a passing grade. Today, Nigerian aviation authorities insisted Abdulmutallab had his passport and visa checked and then went through regular airport security, a process repeated in Amsterdam. There were no red flags raised. Michelle?
Sheila McVicker in London. Thank you. But security flags are being raised at airports across the country, causing long lines and long delays. Here's Kimberly Dozier with the latest.
New security measures combined with post-holiday travel meant long waits, and for some, flights missed.
I knew it was going to be a little bit difficult, so I got here early and still missed my flight.
Part of the delays, more stringent security checks before boarding.
They checked her milk, her juices coming in. When we flew out, they didn't do that in the beginning.
The TSA has asked flights from overseas to institute multiple luggage checks and increase passenger pat-downs. Airline officials say they've also been asked to keep passengers seated for the hour before landing. Some airlines are going further. On United Airlines Flight 923 from London, they shut off the entertainment system because it also includes a map to track the journey.
They didn't have any video or audio during the whole flight.
Wow, during the whole flight?
Yeah, they said they weren't allowed to use anything with maps on it.
Delta and American Airlines also copied the stay seated rule for some domestic flights.
For the last hour, you have to stay in your seat.
But the experts say what happens on the ground is more important than what happens in the air.
I think we need to utilize those resources, both monetary and manpower, and put that effort into ground screening.
The passengers, meanwhile, seem to be taking it in stride.
I'm not overly concerned. It's another threat, another day.
The most surprising thing from the people we spoke to is how little they seem shocked or panicked by the Christmas Day attack. It's as if they accept terrorism attempts and the security delays that go with it as just another part of air travel today. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Dulles International Airport.
Violent and deadly clashes between police and anti-government protesters raged today in Tehran and other Iranian cities. At least 5 demonstrators were killed. Elizabeth Palmer has the latest.
Tens of thousands of protesters fought with police in Tehran in some of the most violent anti-government riots yet. Officially, this was supposed to be a solemn religious occasion for devout Shias to mark Ashura, one of the holiest days of the year. But furious crowds of protesters turned the event political. They took over roads in the city center, torching militia motorcycles and attacking police cars. At first, English-language state television tried to downplay the scale of the unrest.
Sporadic clashes have been reported between anti-government protesters and riot police.
But mobile phone video posted on the internet showed a different story. Witnesses say the protesters were bolder than ever before and the security forces more aggressive. Reports say in at least one area the police fired live bullets into the crowd. The protesters counterattacked. This video appears to show them beating an officer they've captured. By the end of the day, opposition websites reported at least 9 people had been killed. State media said 5, including the nephew of Mir Hossein Mousavi, who emerged this summer as the hero and leader of the opposition movement after losing an election he says was rigged. Witnesses say his nephew Ali was shot in the chest today. It may not be clear how he or the others died, but it is clear that the stage is now set for more unrest that aims to topple Iran's Islamic government. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.
Coming up on tonight's CBS Evening News, the Pope ventures out in public for the first time since his Christmas security scare. Pope Benedict ventured out among the public again today, only 3 days after a woman knocked him down in St. Peter's Basilica in a major security scare for the Vatican. Alan Pizzi has more.
Security for Pope Benedict XVI's visit to the soup kitchen for the poor was notably heavier than normal for such events. Vatican bodyguards flanked his car, and Italian uniformed and plainclothes police filled the street. In an effort to underscore that security concerns are not going to keep him isolated from his flock, officials made sure children were lined up at the barrier for the pontiff to greet. The warm reception notwithstanding, the security detail looked decidedly unhappy. Even before the incident in which a woman tried to grab the Pope during Christmas Mass, senior Vatican officials had wanted this event to take place inside the safety of the Vatican walls. It was Benedict himself who insisted that he would go to the poor, not the other way around. Sharing a meal with the poor on the day the Catholic Church celebrates the Feast of the Holy Family is a long-standing tradition, but this was the first time it has been done in a soup kitchen. Benedict sat with a homeless woman from Afghanistan, a Nigerian, a Somali woman, and a 90-year-old Italian man. The charity helps more than 1,000 such people on a daily basis.
The real meaning of the visit of the Pope is that the poor are part of the family.
And another meaning of this visit may be that for Benedict, charity trumps security. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Rome.
Next on tonight's CBS Evening News, a new green idea for dirty coal emission. One of the country's biggest electric utilities has received federal stimulus money for a pioneering project aimed at cutting harmful gas emissions before they pollute the planet. Cynthia Bowers has more.
At this coal-burning power plant in rural West Virginia, it's not just steam rising from these smokestacks, it's the invisible greenhouse gas carbon dioxide as well. The 77 million tons of coal American Electric Power burns each year pumps well over 100 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, making it the nation's biggest polluter.
There's no doubt that coal is under siege in this country.
As world leaders are talking about how to cut down on greenhouse emissions, American Electric is already experimenting with how to do that. Using state-of-the-art technology, AEP has found a way to bury its pollution problem, literally. It's called carbon capture. Simply put, carbon emissions are grabbed in these pipes before they can escape into the atmosphere and are injected 2 miles into the ground into a giant holding cell, where AEP says it can sit safely for years.
I think this says the technology exists and we are able to commercially develop the results that produce a benefit for the environment relative to CO2 at our power plants.
Right now, there is only a prototype of this carbon capture device, but this month the federal government awarded the company $334 million to build a much bigger version.
Even after expansion, AEP admits it'll still only be able to capture about 17% of the carbon dioxide emissions from this coal. But with tough new regulations almost certainly on the way, they fear doing nothing could spell the beginning of the end of the coal-fired power industry.
It's our survival. I mean, if coal is going to be a part of this country's energy future, we're going to have to be successful with this type of conversion.
None of these green technologies are cheap, and costs will ultimately be passed on to consumers. But big business knows it must clean up its act. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, New Haven, West Virginia.
And just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, seeing isn't always believing. A new look at old photos. They are some of the most famous photographs ever taken, ones that purport to be an accurate portrayal of historic events. But they're also tinged by controversy and nagging doubts. That's our Weekend Journal. Is what we see how it really happened?
They're photos of iconic moments, but are they true snapshots or false images?
Is it real?
There's no way to know.
That's the mystery surrounding Robert Capa's Falling Soldier. An analysis of the photo conducted earlier this year has reignited a decades-long debate about whether the image, supposedly of a man being shot during the Spanish Civil War, was staged. Willis Hartshorn, the director of the International Center of Photography, says it's a debate that may never truly be resolved.
You want the negative of the falling soldier. We don't have that negative. You want the negative after the frame of the falling soldier. we don't have that negative.
Photographer historian Philip Geffner says the controversy over photo editing dates back to at least 1860. And this photo, when Abraham Lincoln's head was attached to John C. Calhoun's body. Calhoun's pose was thought to be more presidential.
That's kind of pre-Photoshop, but that's that's sort of, that's what Photoshop does today.
Famous Civil War photographers like Alexander Gardner even repositioned dead soldiers. Geffner says this practice was routine because there were no real photojournalism standards.
You expect what you see in a newspaper or magazine to be what actually took place. But this is pre-journalism.
But nearly 100 years later, in the 1950s, staging was almost commonplace, like having an American girl in Italy pass a group of Italian men twice. Even the famous kiss at the Hotel de Ville was staged. Life magazine reported it as a spontaneous moment in Paris, but actually 2 models posed for the camera.
This picture is a beautifully crafted lie.
Photographers like Louis Hine altered reality too. He reshot this image after asking the worker to zip up his pants.
Is this a false image? No. This is the work this man did. It's just that he was posing for the camera.
As photo technology evolved, the editing became more sophisticated. This area immediately. Remember these scenes from Kent State? Student photographer John Philo eventually won the Pulitzer Prize for this photo, but Life magazine published an altered version, editing out a pole behind the screaming girl. Probably the most rumor-plagued photo has been this one, the Marines at Iwo Jima.
Those rumors are based on a misunderstanding.
Photographer Joe Rosenthal admitted he staged this photo on the Hill during a radio interview, but a Time reporter assumed he was talking about the memorable flag planting image.
Our expectation of a photograph is that it's real because it looks the way we see the world. It looks like the way we see things.
An expectation that will continue to fuel the debate because images can be influential in framing moments in history, whether the photos are true or not. Coming up on the CBS Evening News, music that moves you on the move. Moviegoers have been spending money like there's no tomorrow. With Avatar leading the way, Hollywood racked up its biggest weekend ever and topped $10 billion for the year for the first time. For many people housebound by illness, the idea of going out to a concert is just a dream. But now some musicians are bringing the music to them in their own living rooms. John Bentley has more.
Music has the power to stir the soul. But could it also help heal the sick? Concerts in Motion is a program that brings professional musicians right into the living rooms of the homebound, giving people who are no longer able to leave the house a chance to hear live music.
The idea was to bring some joy, to bring some uplift, and give them a sense that they're not forgotten, that there are people that care.
Jennifer Finn founded the program with a small group of musicians and began making house calls earlier this year, where they have been performing to rave reviews.
Very good, very good.
Since I've had the stroke, I feel isolated. It helps me survive, makes me feel like I'm a person again.
They even take requests.
Oh, of course. One little Amazing Grace.
Try doing that the next time you're at the symphony.
The things that we've seen so far that, again, are anecdotal are improvements in mood, which almost always lead to improvements in energy, which lead to simple things, which are actually profound, like improvements in appetite, sleeping better. I mean, there's an excitement in their lives that's been missing for a very long time.
Dr. Muller runs the Visiting Doctor program at Mount Sinai and matches up patients for Concerts in Motion.
There are real people with these glorious voices and these glorious instruments. It's everything to us.
They tell us by playing for them, we've given them some of their life back. And that's the best thing you can hear.
This blend of art and medicine strikes a chord with both patients and performers. John Bentley, CBS News, New York.
And that is the CBS Evening News. I'm Michelle Miller. Good night.